Hey everybody, this is my case study on a fifth grade boy whom I refer to as Ben the Entertainer. Ben's problem is he is the class clown. He would much rather be funny than anything else. He gets off task often and needs redirection from the teacher frequently. He also blurts out whenever and whatever he wants. He does the opposite of what he's told to do, and he often claims that he did not hear the directions or misunderstood the directions. But I think that just is his way of being able to, in his mind, do the opposite of what he's been told. He gets up out of his seat frequently. All kinds of excuses from I need a tissue to I need my iPad and everything in between. When I assessed Ben, I noticed that he does not give much effort to his assignments, especially when things get difficult. He does seem to experience failure syndrome, and he is an underachiever. He would much prefer that his classmates think he's funny rather than dumb. And I actually had to redo my initial assessment because in assessing him both in my class and in another class, besides the initial assessment, I noticed that he doesn't seem to respond as well to female teachers as he does to male teachers. I believe this may be partly because of his upbringing. He was neglected and left by his birth mother. His adoptive parents are wonderful people. They've actually adopted 6 children in total, including Ben and his biological brother. But he has blurted out often, I don't like my mom, I hate my mom doesn't love me. He doesn't seem to say anything about his dad, just his mom. I have taught all 6 children, and I have never heard any of the others speak like that. I've never heard any of them say anything like that. So I don't think that this is necessarily a problem with the mother. I think this is a problem with Ben, and I think that because of his early abandonment issues, he has trouble responding to female teachers. And while that doesn't maybe directly affect his motivation to learn, I would say that an environment is certainly, the proper environment is certainly conducive to a motivation to learn, and he seems to struggle with an environment where there is a female in charge. Again, that's just my thoughts on that. As far as an intervention for Ben, I think some things that could help him would be if he could break tasks into smaller pieces, and then also if he could connect assignments to real life. Ben visits the learning specialist at our school 3 times a week. From my conversations with her, they spend a lot of time working on test-taking strategies and study skills and things like that. And while Ben does receive lower scores, I have witnessed him, especially in my STEM class, get a little excited when the classwork is real life or project-based or hands-on. Also, when we do projects in STEM class, I break the tasks into small pieces. Usually a project of any size will take anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks. So we just do one step at a time, and he seems to do really well with that. So I think those 2 things would help him. I definitely think autonomy, giving him a choice and a voice in his learning. I actually witnessed this in his language arts class, which was the second class I observed him in. And interestingly enough, it was a male teacher. So again, I'm not sure how much of this may have been male teacher and how much of this was the fact that the class was run really well with a group project and an engaging video. And then the students got to choose between two assignments and the way they wanted to demonstrate their learning about the content that day, which just happened to be onomatopoeia. And Ben chose to do that through a comic strip, and he seemed to really enjoy that. So I think autonomy would be a great thing for Ben. And then I definitely think praise. And I think not praising him so much for his intellect or that he got a problem right, but praising him for positive character qualities like, hey, Ben, I noticed how determined you were, and I noticed how hard you worked. Way to go. Way to persevere. Those character qualities are things that can take him through life in his continued motivation to learn, as opposed to his intellect, which is not necessarily something that he can fix. And then I also think showing love. And I know the first thing on the slide here says, when grouping students, be intentional. And you might think, how does that show love? Well, when we care about our students, we are intentional. We are intentional in the choices that we make. And again, in the language arts classroom, I observed a teacher being very intentional about where all of his students were placed, not just Ben. And then also, I think obviously taking time to build a relationship with him. As educators, relationships are key. And I think with a young man like Ben and the issues because of the life that he came from and the life he's experiencing now and some of his struggles, a positive relationship with him would go a long way. So these items that I took from the Target model, I think would really help in an intervention with Ben. My rationale for some of the items that I chose in the intervention were that I think Ben needs to experience some success in order to be motivated further. Now, I know that success alone is not a chief motivator of learning, but it is certainly a factor. When he experiences a little success, I think that will help him be more motivated. The other part of my rationale was when he is given a choice, he seems to be more motivated. So any opportunity that he has to have a choice and a voice in his education help him. So those are the rationale behind some of those interventions. And these are my thoughts. When I based my strategies upon the Target framework, I considered all of these things about Ben. I considered his home environment, both pre and post-adoption. I considered what seems to be an apparent dislike and distrust of females in general, but obviously female teachers especially. I noticed his obvious increased engagement when he was given choice and voice. I noticed that he needs to have the focus taken off his abilities and focused rather on his character. And I noticed that in the first class I observed him in his math class, the teacher focused a little bit more on his abilities, and his abilities are lacking, so that did not motivate him at all. Ben needs a connection to his friend group. He very much wants their approval, hence the class clown, hence the make everybody laugh and do funny things. So I think we could take that connection that he needs to his friend group and use that in a positive way to motivate him. Again, going back to placing him in a group intentionally might really help with that aspect. And then I also took into account that Ben needs some positive, encouraging relationships with his female teachers. And I think that would go a long way. So all of those things are the thoughts that I had behind the rationale for the interventions that I chose. Now, while I haven't seen any major results in Ben yet, I did observe many positive steps as I observed him in that language arts class. He worked well with his group. He seemed to enjoy that comic strip assignment that he chose. In my class, I did an assignment I thought he would really like. He didn't respond so well. So again, it's a work in progress. I hope to see more results in the future as I continue to teach Ben. Here are my conclusions. I believe that a student's environment is an important factor to motivation. I believe that the motivation to learn can be altered, especially in the formative years. I think in all of our reading in our Brophy textbook or in our book during this class, we saw strategies and ways that we can alter someone's motivation to learn, even our own motivation to learn, as we talked this week about how we've gotten through COVID. and our intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation, and how that's changed, and how it can be fixed and altered. So I believe Ben can be transformed. I think character development can help foster motivation. When character's developed, I'm speaking especially of Ben here, he can develop those character qualities that can help him as he grows, not just intellectual strategies or something that may be fleeting. And then the last thing, don't ever give up on a student. I say this to myself, I say this to all of us. Some students just take longer than others to come around. I've been in education 30 years. I've had the privilege of teaching hundreds of students. And one of my least favorite things as a teacher is when the teacher from the year before would come to me and say something like, "Oh, you've got Ben this year. Look out, let me tell you about him." And I learned very quickly to say, "No, that's okay. You don't need to tell me. I'll develop my own opinion." You see, when we develop that opinion, that may cause us to give up on a student. Ben might take longer than others, but I really think Ben can succeed if we will all work together as educators and build that relationship with him. Thank you so much for your time.